Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week to 10 days. In today's video, this will take us to around the 9th, 10th of February. I'm going to start off looking at developments in the stratosphere, being a big temperature rise over the past 24 hours. The stratospheric warming that we've been talking about has indeed occurred over the past 24 hours. So I'll tweet for everything that's happened in a moment. Before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages. If you have a browser widgets and click through the links, if there's any articles that you're interested in, you're going to help us to pay the website, and thanks very much for doing that. So this chart you're looking at just here is from the Japanese Meteorological Agency, the JMA, and it's showing you the temperature at 10 HPA over North Pole, which is one of the top layers of the atmosphere in the stratosphere over the pole. Well, when we did yesterday's second video, we was around here, around minus 40 degrees at 10 HPA. So we have lifted the temperature quite a bit, but in the past 24 hours we've gone a lot further up the chart with this black line. We've gone up to around minus 10, so we've raised the temperatures by around 30 degrees in the past 24 hours. A big warming has taken place. Won't yet say it's a sudden stratospheric warming because we've got to reverse the zonal winds at 10 and 30 HPA. I'm not sure we're going to quite do that, so it probably won't be a technical sudden stratospheric warming, but nevertheless this does look a very significant warming that's taking place in the stratosphere over the North Pole at 10 HPA, and that chart does look really quite dramatic, doesn't it, to go from there below average, colder than average, up to there in less than a week. Just going to show you how quickly the temperatures do push up in the stratosphere at this time of the year. At 30 HPA, nothing quite as dramatic showing up there. Yes, a warming is occurring, but haven't really moved things up from where they was yesterday. It's around where they was when we did yesterday's second video. Takes a little while for the temperature at 30 HPA, which is a bit lower down, to respond to the temperature at 10 HPA. Eventually, if this is going to affect the weather, if it's going to produce northern blocking over the pole, the warm bubble there has got to get into the troposphere. So we'll know if it is propagating down by lifting this black line up. We won't go to the sort of temperature level that we're at 10 HPA, but if we can get up to here somewhere with temperatures, then we will know that, yes, lower down at 30 HPA, we're bringing those warmer temperatures through from 10 HPA. So it's a case of watch your space. But 10 HPA, very dramatic stratospheric warming has occurred over the past 24 hours. So there we go, that's happened. Let's have a look at the GFS temperature forecast for 10 HPA in the stratosphere next then. So this is where we are today with those warm temperatures over the top of the pole. We may see the temperature lifting up a little bit more from where it was yesterday when we get today's update tomorrow. See what I mean? So there's a 24-hour delay on those charts with the JMA updating. So tomorrow this black line here might be a little bit higher. I'm not sure if it will be, but it could be a little bit higher than it is today. So this is where we stand at the moment. Then this is website metroseal.fr. Got warm temperatures at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. Another quite big warming that happens there tomorrow. Actually, the red colours reappear and start pushing towards the pole, so that has another go at really lifting the temperature. It'll certainly stay where it is at the moment, may lift a little bit more. Then things level off through the 1st of February, but look at this on the 3rd. Another pretty big warming is moving through from Russia in towards the North Pole, so that has another go at lifting the temperatures. As we go through into the second week of February, another warming pushing through there, but that one looks more modest compared to the warmings that we've got going on right now and in the next couple of days. And then we find the temperatures, inevitably, they can't stay at this sort of warm level in the stratosphere indefinitely, so the temperatures do start to drop off. And by then, we won't be worrying about what's happening at 10 HPA. We'll be looking at what's happening in the troposphere, by the time you get through to mid-February, whether there's any response from the troposphere, which is the layer of the atmosphere weather takes place. We'll be looking to see whether there's any response. By this point, we probably won't be bothering to look at the stratospheric temperatures anymore. So mid-February, that's when we're going to start looking, see whether the blocking results from this stratospheric warming. This is ECMWF. This was updated at the University of Berlin website this morning. Again, the forecast from the ECMWF model in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA. We find that the black cross here is where the North Pole is, just there. So this is for today, and we see, again, looking very warm at 10 HPA over the North Pole right now, which we know, of course, it is. We go through to the 2nd of February, and still pretty warm, really, with temperatures at 10 HPA then. A little bit lower from where we are right now, but even so, temperatures still significantly warmer than average by 2nd of February. And then another warming pushes through on the 4th of February, which I think is Saturday. So, again, it's the same idea as what the GFS is doing with these repeated warmings pushing out of Russia into the North Pole in terms of those stratospheric temperatures. And then we go through into the 8th of February, by which time it's starting to cool down, still a little bit warmer than average, but as I say, we can't keep these temperatures going indefinitely in the top of the stratosphere, so things by the 8th of February are beginning to cool down. And then, of course, we've got to start thinking about what the response is in the lower levels of the atmosphere, in the troposphere. This is 30 HPA, a little bit lower down. Still looking quite cold there today. We know it's a bit warmer than average from this chart just here, so we know temperatures have lifted up to being a little bit warmer than average. But overall, still quite cold with those temperatures at 30 HPA. By the time we go through to the 1st of February, the temperatures are picking up a bit at 30 HPA, so it does imply that the warm temperatures we've got at 10 HPA are beginning to move downwards into the lower levels of the stratosphere, not probably getting to the troposphere, but certainly moving down to the lower levels of the stratosphere. And then we go through up to the 8th of February, by which time, again, things are starting to turn a bit colder then. So we do bring some of this warmth down to 30 HPA, but I'm not sure we'll bring quite enough to have a very big effect in terms of blocking, and that's probably why the zonal winds aren't reversing. So to get a technical sudden stratospheric warming, I've been explaining this in the videos recently, to get a technical sudden stratospheric warming, we have to reverse the zonal winds at 10 and 30 HPA. We have to turn them from westerlies to easterlies. And this chart, again from the University of Berlin, shows that we do that at 1 HPA. So this is the box just here, that is for 1 HPA. And yes, we go down into negative territory in terms of the zonal wind at 1 HPA. And that's the very highest level of the stratosphere. Can't go any further than 1 HPA in terms of the stratosphere. But lower down, we've got 10 and 30 HPA in this box, indicated by the blue and the red lines, and they're not going negative, they're not going into reverse. They get very close to it, but just don't quite get down into negativity, which would be to go down to this sort of level just here. So again, we're falling just short of a sudden stratospheric warming, but even so, a very significant warming is taking place at 10 HPA. At the very least, it might not kill the polar vortex, but at the very least, it should really give it quite a kicking, and there is bound to be an effect through February on the polar vortex. There's bound to be some form of blocking, cold getting down into the mid-latitudes. Of course, it doesn't guarantee that the UK will be on the right side of that. We might not be. But very significant warming is taking place, even if it's not a technical sudden stratospheric warming. So coming on to weather next week to 10 days, this is the ECMWF 500 millibar height anomaly flow chart we've got just here. The GFS, have a look at that in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere. It's a troposphere, essentially, where weather is taking place. On these charts, red is extrapolating to high pressure, blue to low pressure. This is from Penn State University website, by the way. So we find that we've got ridging here to the east of the country with the ECMWF and a deep trough in the Atlantic. This trough is going to give us an unsettled week this week, but by the time we go through sort of 8 to 10 days away, which is into next week, we find this trough is probably starting to weaken. The jet stream, I think, is splitting a little bit, taking some of the energy to the south, some to the north, as it's coming up against this wall, essentially, of high pressure that's sitting to the east. To get cold from this, what we're going to do is take that high pressure that way and set it up over here, which we could do with the stratospheric warming taking place, and then that would turn winds into the north and to the east. As it is, that isn't a particularly cold setup, although it will be turning cooler, of course, because the air is coming in off the continent by that point. We're a little bit further north with that area of high pressure. On the GFS, actually, it is pushing up more towards Scandinavia, possibly going a bit further north of that. The trough is still deep in the Atlantic with quite a strong jet stream. Again, that's going something like that. This one is closer to pulling in colder air from the east and the north. The GFS is closer to doing that than the ECM. WF. Not sure if that's yet the response to the stratospheric warming. Bit early to be suggesting that, but it is interesting that ridge might eventually finish up going to the north. GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles next 2 weeks. The red line here is the temperature average in terms of the upper air temperatures. We're going to have a mild week now. For the rest of the week, temperatures are going to be coming out milder than average. As we get through into the weekend, and then on into next week, what we're going to find is that temperatures do start to drop off, but only going closer to average through this period here, which is still very unsettled period. So it might actually be that although the upper air temperatures are coming out close to average, in the end it's a bit milder than average, because in this unsettled period we won't be getting frosty nights, of course. And then go through into the second week of February, which is this part of the graph just here. And we've got a lot of scatter coming through there. And you'll notice there is one very dramatic cold outlier. But there are a few other cold outlier members as well. However, there are several members of the ensemble that are looking quite warm as well. So into the second week of February, which is sort of the minimum time when we might start to see some blocking from this stratospheric warming through this part just here. Again, a lot of uncertainty in that period. It'll be a case of watch this space. Rainfall spikes looking very dramatic. Quite a bit of rain coming up over the next 2 or 3 days, and then some very wet weather turning up over the weekend and into next week. So more heavy bouts of rain coming through. After that, into the second week of February, perhaps a little bit of a drying trend beginning to emerge, and that just is implying that we could be breaking out of this Atlantic driven start to February in the second week of the month. Temperature anomalies are milder than average for the next week. So from the 30th of January to the 7th of February, we're coming out milder than average. Even into the east and the southeast of Europe, we've had a lot of cold weather this winter. Things are looking significantly milder there. So the westerlies are going to be penetrating a long way into Europe over the next week. Precipitation anomalies looking wetter than average. I haven't said that very often this winter, but there we go. The west of Europe coming out with above average precipitation over the week from the 30th of January to the 7th of February. The all-important charts then, and this is for GFS for Friday when low pressure is driving in off the Atlantic, looking proper wet and windy there. This area of low pressure for Saturday, got to keep an eye on that. It is threatening to bring some very wet weather into the south. It may just impact France, but it's one to keep an eye on. Could be a notably wet day across England and Wales on Saturday. Further north looks very showery. More low pressure is driving in on Sunday, and then we go through to the early part of next week, still looking really unsettled. That looks a deep storm in the Atlantic. I think the central pressure there is around 950 millibars, something like that. That's a very deep low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing wet and windy weather to the early part of next week. Into the middle of next week, we keep it unsettled. Notice with time, heights are rising to the northeast of the country. That's the wall of high pressure that is on the height anomaly chart. But up to day 10, which is Thursday, 9th of February, we're still in an Atlantic flow there. With low pressure coming up against this ridge. This high pressure to the east is essentially blocking, it doesn't look a great deal, but it's essentially blocking the flow of the westerlies. They're coming up against this high pressure, and some of the energy is going up there, some going down there, and we've got fronts within the flow. So that's why it's so wet, really, because the fronts can't progress off to the east as they would normally do. So they're just coming up against this ridge, coming to a halt and producing lots of rain up to day 10. After that, the extended run of the GFS does begin to build this high pressure more, and actually does turn the winds into the east there as we go through up to the 12th of February. The winds are going into the east. There's not much cold air left across Europe by that point, so not really a cold easterly, but we're certainly breaking out into the second week of February. We're breaking out of that Atlantic-driven flow, and things are looking a lot drier, and they would be colder as well, albeit nothing particularly cold at that point. But of course, you've got to get the blocking in place first, and then you worry about cold temperatures afterwards. EWF finally bringing low pressure in off the Atlantic at the end of the week and into weekend, looking very unsettled, really wet, probably quite windy at times too. The early part of next week has a storm coming in from the Atlantic, so both models are in agreement with that. And then we go up to day 10, which is Thursday, 9th of February. Again, heights are rising to the east, starting to break us out of this unsettled weather. The low pressure is beginning to stall in the Atlantic. The energy is going something like that, splitting, and we've got this high pressure developing to the east. Where things go after that, of course, we could either just have the high pressure sitting around, as we've had a lot this winter with sort of frost and fog, or because of the stratospheric warming, it's possible we might be able to get that high pressure more to the north and start to bring down some properly cold air into the second half of February. It will be a case of watching this space on that. So the stratospheric warming has occurred. We've been talking about it for about a couple of weeks now. It's happened. It's happened yesterday. It's still happening today at 10 HPA. We've got to wait and see what the response to that is in the second half of February. In the meantime, the first week of February looking really unsettled, lots of wind and rain, stormy at times too, and potentially very wet. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.